Hello? 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 This is the Vancouver
Commercial
Real Estate Podcast.
and welcome back to the Vancouver Commercial Real Estate Podcast. I'm Cory Wright.
And I'm Adam Scalina, your sometimes host, and it's good to be back in the studio, Cory. How you doing? You look well rested for a guy that apparently hasn't slept in a few days.
Yeah, I'm going on no sleep, but I'll tell you, this coffee that you guys have here,
Yeah,
phenomenal.
Yeah,
Phenomenal.
Here's what you do: you put as double the scoops based on the cups. So like 6 cups, 12 scoops. that's the way.
That's
the
secret.
formula around here.
Well, I was wondering how after that first cup of coffee, I felt like I needed to go for a run.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's the thing. And I heard you just got back from Kelowna. You white knuckled the Coca-Cola.
Oh, yeah, there was some patches there where there was lots of snow, not snowing, but snow on the side.
Right.
I think it was probably like 1 or 2 degrees, winds howling, and the fog was so dense. I've never been anything as dense as that before. Like we're going about 30 with your hazards. Yeah. The 30 with your hazards
Right.
on. And I'm thinking, my God, I got 2 kids I got to get home to. So
This is the Coca-Cola is, I've had some of the scariest moments of my life on the Coca-Cola, and I like seldom go to the Okanagan.
yeah.
But it's just, if you're like, you're really gambling like with your life. If you go
You could be.
this time of year on,
Yeah.
like all winter, is just, it just depends. But it can also be clear and then change on like a moment's notice.
Yeah, totally. Well, if you stop sending me up to your investment house up there to rake the leaves and cut the grass, I might be able to get through this winter here, okay? Who do we have today on the show?
We have a fantastic show today. We've got Maxime Charron. He's the LeadingAhead Energy. I want to make sure I get that right. LeadingAhead Energy. He's the founder and CEO. This is a company that is focused on sustainability. They're focused on EV charging for real estate, right? For multifamily and commercial real estate, which is super exciting because it piqued your interest because you're dealing with strip malls and all these buildings that have been around, that now there's this opportunity for revenue through EV charging.
Well, it's one thing, too, that we find that's sort of crept into the conversation more and more over the past couple of years is when you especially get into these open-air shopping centers where you've got retail that looks directly onto the parking lot.
Right.
Is tenants are asking now, is there EV charging stations in the center? If they are, where are they located? How close can I get to them?
Yeah.
And we talk a little bit about on the show there that there's a strip mall that I pass that didn't have a Tesla station in it before, now has a Tesla station. And the Fat Burger went from nobody to everybody.
Yeah.
So it could be the
Including
number one
Cory, right?
Yeah, exactly. I go to the Fat Burger without the Tesla. I just park my car and eat the food anyways. But it's amazing how much more that crept into conversations now. And also from landlords as well when they're looking to acquire stuff. So that's why we thought it'd be great to have Max on, talk a little bit about where is this going, because you're seeing more and more Teslas. The richest man in the world, as of the time we recorded this, is the man who founded Tesla.
Right.
So, that's the direction it seems like we're going in. So he's great how he unpacks it. He lets us know a lot more about how it looks both from the consumer side, but also from the landlord side, and also the direction in which they want to go. I throw a couple curveball questions in there thinking maybe I'm going to stump him, but he just breezed right over them.
And the other thing is, and no spoilers here, but at the end of the show, he actually adds a layer to the value add of electric charging stations at your business, which I had never considered, which I think actually is one of the most profound kind of components of this, right?
I think there's 2 models. Like you can either sort of like lease land kind of to Tesla, which is my understanding is how they work. They come in, they lease it, and then they do all that stuff, pay the bills for their portion, or you can actually acquire the charging stations and generate revenue not only off of the charging station,
but 3 different ways.
Yeah, 3 different ways. And I think one way, and I think one way too that I think from a landlord perspective is you might see increased rent closer to those charging stations. So if you put them in an area maybe that's not as busy in the shopping center, that could actually dramatically pick up that side of the area, which then could be reflected directly in the rents paid by those tenants.
Right.
Lots of great ways to sort of get into that business on the charging side of it.
Maybe we'll wait for Max to explain it, but I love the first to market component because right now, if I have an electric vehicle, and I'm going to a place to charge it, I'm thinking, okay, what am I going to do for however long it takes me to charge my car? And I'm thinking I'm going into whatever shop or restaurant or coffee shop that's immediately in front of me, right? And you would imagine that this could last a couple of years until, all the new outfits get kind of suited or until this gets solved at a better level than it is today.
Well, we were joking about it just a few minutes ago, but that Fat Burger that I passed
Packed.
it's literally always busy, it looks like.
Yeah.
So that could be a direct correlation of that Tesla charging station there, where maybe they were doing decent numbers for that franchise, where now maybe they're doing above decent numbers or even much better numbers than anticipated. Because you've got like 10 or 15 stations there. They're going to take a few minutes to charge. Let's go and have a milkshake. Let's have a quick bite to eat.
Yeah.
So, it can be a direct reflection on that, maybe that tenant's revenue that could be reflected again on the rents collected by the landlord at some point.
Great for Fat Burger, horrible for our waistlines. But here's the thing. Before we get to this conversation with Max, there's one more thing I want to do, and I want to answer. There's been some listener questions. I got an email last week from a listener who was they've been listening to the show. We talk a lot about different markets, different asset classes, and at different price points. Basically, what they're saying is they're trying to make sense of, what asset class should I be going to? What area do you guys like? Like they're trying to maybe suss out a more specific approach into the market and where we're seeing the opportunity. So I want to get to that. But before I want to get to that, let's talk today sponsor.
Our good friends over at Impact Commercial, Al and his team there for all your commercial lending needs with over 50 years of commercial lending experience. Reach out to them at impactcommercial.ca.
And just reach out if you want to talk to a good guy. Because
they're all great over there.
Yeah.
They're all great over there.
Great gang of people.
Good guys.
So that's fantastic, Cory. So first thing is 3 questions that come out of it. Number one is you're looking at a market right now, and we talk about the BC market, so let's keep it refined within BC. What market are you going into?
Victoria.
Hands down.
That was quick. Hands down. I think we had Frank O'Brien on the show.
Yep.
A very, very well.
Business in Vancouver.
Yeah, exactly. Well-known writer for real estate, and they just launched their 5 markets on there, and they pegged Victoria as number 1, followed by Kelowna as number 2. Why I would probably go to Victoria over Kelowna, I think, Kelowna's obviously had a massive amount of growth and all of that stuff. I think one thing, too, that's really attractive about Victoria is it's government anchored. And coming through this pandemic, Kelowna probably does a lot of business based on the tourism sector, and that will obviously come back really quickly. But Victoria's got government and they've got tech. And those are 2 areas that have gone through this pandemic without a blink and even grown on the tech side of it. So I really like that opportunity. And also with Victoria, they have a lot of similar challenges to we have in Vancouver where they're landlocked.
Yeah.
Right. They got the water there and stuff. So
it also feels like a real, I love Kelowna.
Yeah.
We talk about Kelowna all the time. Kelowna sometimes feels like a town masquerading as a city, right? Where Victoria seems like it's a city. It's a proper
100%.
city. And I feel like it's going to have legs for years to come. And I feel like the island overall feels like a pretty secure place to invest.
Well, if you look at Victoria, you got government as your number 1 tenant probably throughout the city, more or less. You've got the tech industry that's growing over there. You got UVic, which has seen massive growth. I think I read like almost 40% over the past 6 or 7 years.
Fantastic school too.
Yeah, you got so many companies coming to Victoria. So as these grads come out of UVic, they're not having to leave Victoria now. That's just adding more pressure to the housing crunch, which is landlocked like we just talked about. There's lots of great developments going on over in Victoria. The absorption of the product has been really, really good, and it probably outpaced what some developers maybe anticipated.
Right.
So I think if you think you're going to go lease your space there overnight like you do in Vancouver, that's not the market it is, but it's growing steadily, year over year. And over the past 5 years has seen an increased uptick in those percentages that I think it's going to continue to grow. And I think we'll look back in that market, say 10 years down the road, and think, wow, they had a very similar growth to Vancouver on a smaller scale. But from a percentage standpoint, great returns for all those people who got involved.
Number 2 question is, what asset class are you buying? That's a tough one. You're in all of them, right? You like all of them.
I like all of them. Naturally, right now you'd say industrial. When you'd say industrial, you'd say multifamily, the beds and sheds concept. To be honest with you, I think if you look into the Victoria marketplace, I like the retail sector. And why I do is a lot of the retail in the downtown core is in heritage buildings that limit the development potential. So you got markets like the Harris Green District, which is kind of I would maybe relate it to in a Yale town that's emerging. Or you got the Old Town District where Reliance just came out with their massive plan. And you've got Lefebvre and Company doing a lot of work down there. I think Nicola Wealth is involved in that marketplace. So you've got a lot of these markets that are growing that are within a stone's throw downtown. And when we come from Vancouver, Gastown to Yaletown, well, that's probably a good 20-minute, half-hour walk. You can do all of downtown Victoria in 10 minutes. So so if something on the outskirts of downtown you're not walking 20 city blocks, you're walking 4 city blocks to get to it, or 6 city blocks to get. So I really like those markets. And if you get on the outskirts of the downtown area, I like the retail sector there just because I think you're going to find they're going to be very, very dense areas with limited retail opportunity.
Interesting. And each neighborhood has its own kind of distinct flavor as well, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's funny, like whenever we get people, often investors from Toronto, and we're driving around Vancouver and you drive across the street and you're like, now I'm downtown, now I'm in Yaletown, now I'm in Gastown, now I'm in, we're a city that loves to name basically city blocks, neighborhoods, right?
Yeah.
They're sub areas. And I feel like Victoria's got that same kind of way of doing things. And
it is.
Never mind though, the fact of the matter is it's all great downtown, downtown Victoria for sure. Now, price point, what do I need to play basically? How much do I need to play?
Well, I think if you want to get in from like a retail investment standpoint, you're probably going to be looking close to that $700 a foot mark is where it's coming. And it's kind of gone from probably like 5s and 4s 2-3 years ago. So you can see the growth in the market. Industrial, what everyone seems to love, you're still probably in that low to high 3, maybe creep into the 4 there. I love industrial. The only caveat I would say with the industrial market in there, as low as the vacancy rate is there's a lot under construction and proposed that's going to come to market that, the question becomes, is the absorption of the product there for it? I would like to think so, but anytime you throw 1 million to 2 million square feet onto a market that maybe Greater Victoria's 250,000 to 300,000 people, can that market absorb it? So that's the only caveat I would say with it. Otherwise, I would say industrial as much as anyone else would. But
expectation, this is a bonus question. I'm just adding that didn't come in through the listener, but expectations cap rate wise.
Yeah. Well, to be honest with you go back a few years, you were probably, consistently 5.5. And I think now you're seeing a lot of those 5.5s turns into like 4.5. So I would say between 4.5 and 5, which is what we call cap rate compression.
Right.
Which is just driving up the value of the property based on the same income. So I'm a very big believer in that market. I think you're going to see cap rates are going to get down into that low 4s, maybe high 3s, similar to what we see over here over the next decade, not overnight, but over the next decade. So if you look at it from an investment standpoint, if I'm buying something at a 5 cap rate at a $30 a foot lease rate, 10 years pass, I'm selling it now at a 4 cap rate at a $60 lease rate. Very hard metrics to find, and that's how you can double and triple your investments.
Fantastic. Well, without further ado, why don't we cut to our conversation with Max Charron?
Enjoy, guys.
Okay, so we're here with Max Charron. He is the founder and CEO of LeadingAhead Energy. How you doing, Max?
Doing very well, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Max, for all of our listeners there, can you tell us a little bit more about yourself and about your company?
Yeah, so about myself, French Canadian, moved out to Vancouver about 10 years ago, studied in sustainable business leadership and business, and it's really kind of what got me to what I'm doing today. Really wanted to find a hybrid path between sustainability and business. And the company I founded 5 years ago is LeadingAhead Energy. What we're doing is really providing a full service of EV charging infrastructure with a vendor agnostic approach. So we're not tied to any manufacturers or vendors. We're really there to find the best solution for every client. We're really taking our clients from the planning phase to writing grants to helping finding the right hardware and software, as well as doing project management and supplying the charging stations if needed afterwards and doing the installation.
One reason why we thought it would be a great topic to cover is what we've seen happen, more so probably over the past year, maybe 2 years now, is when potential tenants are looking into, say, open air shopping centers. One question that comes up is, are there EV charging stations in the mall yet? And if they are, how close can we get to them? And we're also finding vendors and companies looking to acquire these type of assets that are also, again, asking, is there EV charging stations in the mall? If there is, how many are there? Is there possibility to add more? So I think we've seen a steady growth in those type of inquiries, enough that I think there's a lot of people there that probably feel that this is kind of the way we're heading into the, what we're looking at moving forward, what obviously you're growing and expanding at a rapid pace. Who are your clients primarily, and what are they looking for from you when they call you? 2 years out, 2 years, we're building a building or we're buying a strip center. How does that phone call walk us through that?
Yeah, so we really have like a few different types of clients in the real estate industry. We really have 2 to 3 distinct types of clients, I would say. The first type is really the developer builder. So with them, we are working at the planning phase. We really need to start working and planning for EV charging when you get involved with the electrical engineering firm. So that's typically the best way of planning it. And a lot of people think that installing a charging station is very easy. You just put it on the wall and you plug it somewhere. But the somewhere is the very tricky part here. The best way is to really have the electrical infrastructure in place during construction, so you don't have to retrofit most of the time a brand new building because there's been a lack or a miss in the planning to have the proper electrical infrastructure to supply enough power for the charging stations that are going to be required either during move-in day or really looking further down the road and future-proofing the building of what's going to be needed 10, 15 years down the road.
Wow.
The second type of clients we have is really the kind of REITs, so real estate investment trusts. So those clients will have many buildings across the country or multiple countries, and they have a portfolio where they're really starting to bring everything to their head office and having like a global or nationwide strategy in terms of EV charging. Because when it started, the local property manager was mostly dealing with it, and it was dealt at a very local or per property level. But now it's really trying to build into a strategy where the sustainability team is also involved, just to capture all of the green gas emission that can be also put into their corporate social responsibility report. But they also have goals to make sure that every single property will be equipped with a charging station by 2025, 2030, 2040, depending on the company. So that's another big driver for us.
And the third?
And the third would be more in the transportation space, where people are going to have fleets or transportation hubs. There's a lot of charging infrastructure, especially fast chargers or level 3s, that can accommodate passenger vehicles, but they're not really built for light duty trucks or anything. If you're holding a trailer or anything like that, you wouldn't be able to charge because the site is not designed that way, or the charging stations are not fast enough. They haven't kept up with technology of the vehicles. So that's another area where we're seeing a lot of growth as well.
So Max, it sounds like you're kind of covering a lot of different asset classes for buildings, right? You're doing kind of a lot of different commercial types of buildings, and then you're doing, it sounds like, multifamily residential as well?
Yeah, we're doing a lot of multifamily residential with developers for brand new buildings.
Okay.
We're also doing condos, although it's not our primary market because condos sometimes have a lot of roadblocks with strata council or HOAs, depending where you live in the country. If you're in a strata building, there's many steps that needs to be taken before engaging anyone, making sure that you have a budget, making sure you have a lot of people that are interested, because otherwise it's a lot of work that both parties can put into a project that can easily be rejected during the AGM.
Vote. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I mean, one of the things I'm in residential and Cory's in commercial real estate, and one of the things that strikes me is we have all these, hundreds of buildings in the city of Vancouver that are now from the 1970s, 1980s, 1990s that all have to be retrofitted. And it sounds to me like it's not a question of if they can be retrofitted. It's more based on just how expensive it's going to be and the various solutions that they have to explore before voting. Is that correct?
That's correct. But you also need to have some sort of a resolution to make sure that people are aligned.
Right.
And wanting to pursue, like, there's enough support to pursue that type of project, because it's very laborious in time. Let's just put it this way.
Yeah.
And there's some older buildings like built in the 70s or 80s. I'm thinking about Kitsilano or East Van here, or even some in North Vancouver, where it's never impossible to retrofit a building, but at what cost? And there's a lot of studies that shows 80% of all the charging is done at home. And that used to be true for the first wave of EV owners, if you will. And those people were wealthier. They could afford a $50,000 to $100,000 vehicle, no problem. And they also typically had the fortitude to charge at home, have a private garage where it's really easy to put a charging station. However, now what we're seeing is the used market is coming up because there's a lot more used EVs on the market, but also the price of new EVs has come down quite significantly. So you can pretty much buy an electric vehicle for $35,000 after grant, which might sound a lot for a lot of people, but if you take out, $100 or $200 worth of gas every 2 weeks or every month, then the payments are kind of equal, if not less.
Right.
And those people will be relying a lot on public charging because they won't have anywhere to charge, especially in, Kits, East Van, or everywhere there's street parking, even in other cities like Toronto, Montreal, or Calgary.
Right.
And yeah.
Which actually is like a hurdle to people even just getting into electric vehicles, because a lot of people that I talk to that are living in older buildings, I mean, that's been one of the things preventing them from pulling the trigger on, say, like a Tesla or the variety of options out there.
Yeah, and I think that the uptake in EV is quite underestimated. As soon as we put charging stations, sometimes we start with just visitor stall, which is a starting point. It's by no mean and now we're talking mostly residential. Like, it's by no mean a future-proof solution where it's going to last the next 10 years. But as soon as there's 2 or 3 charging stations in the complex, you're seeing the adoption of EVs going tenfold, just because they know that there's some point of charging available to them.
Right.
But then it gets overcrowded really quickly, and then you get back into the same issue of, okay, where do we find power, and how can we bring an EV ready plan, which the province has a really good grant on that can be used. And it's to make sure that you go 100% of all stalls being EV ready or having a junction box or point of contact.
One thing that jumped out to me, Max, when we were talking last week or the week before that, was you had mentioned that there's a lot of shopping centers now that are looking to get EV charging stations in their parking lots. Can you sort of elaborate a little bit more about that? Like, is this the way of the future type of thing, where every center or every shopping center is just going to have multiple EV charging stations?
I think it's definitely the way of the future. I know we all like to shop on Amazon, I'm assuming, but everybody still goes to their shopping center once in a while, if not quite often. Grocery store, I know we can do online, but most people are still going physically there. There's 2 levels of charging stations. So basically, there's the level 2, which will provide a 240-volt 40 amp breaker. And for those people not familiar with the electricity, it's really the same thing as your stove or your dryer plug in your house. But that will charge a newer vehicle from 7 to 12 hours, depending on the size of the battery pack. So it's really good for a top up. Same way as, during midday when your cell phone is 50% full, you're going to plug it in right away and get a little top up because you know that might not last the whole day. It's kind of the same thing with an electric vehicle. You don't wait for your orange light to flash in your dashboard because you're going to run out of gas and then you just fuel up. You kind of plug it wherever you can when you stop because it's the most convenient. There's also level 3 charging stations where this is where we're kind of talking into decentralization of energy. And that's why there's a big push for oil and gas to go towards hydrogen, because hydrogen keeps the supply chain the same, right? It needs to be produced, you need trucks, you need to bring it to a station, and then you keep all the resellers kind of the same. But with electricity, the most important piece is the real estate. And then you have access to electricity and you become an energy supplier right away, overnight.
Right.
And that's, I think, the most important part to understand for landowners, as they can become an energy supplier overnight because they have the most valuable piece, which is the land. And if you look at what Tesla is doing, is they're trying to close, 5, 10, 15-year lease on 10 to 20 stalls at the time because they understand that's the most valuable piece and they don't own any.
So I think a lot of our listeners, I think as everyone is, very familiar with Tesla. And I unfortunately don't have an electric car, but I see these Tesla stations that are popping up in retail strip centers now. And I pass one on my way home every day. And there's got to be at least 5 to 10, maybe 10 to 15 is probably more accurate, Tesla parking stations outside of Fatburger that Fatburger never had anyone in it. And now that Fatburger's lined up every day. And there's 20 Teslas there. Is that kind of a strategy that you're seeing from, you mean kind of these retailers or these strip center owners where they're trying to maybe put charging stations in areas that maybe aren't as populated by mall goers to try to increase the traffic there for those type of businesses?
Yeah, definitely. That's a really big driver. Seeing the return on investment on a charging station alone at today's market rate might not make sense. It will in 3 to 5 years. But it's important to be kind of first because everybody's got a routine. If you have your gasoline car, you probably go to 3 to 4 gas station top because it's within your weekly routine unless you go on a road trip. It's the exact same thing with the electric charging station. You're going to start going to the charging hubs that have enough stations so you're not stranded or waiting for somebody because there's only one charger. And because you made a routine to go to that grocery store or, your hairdresser is in that building or your favorite liquor store, and then you just pop in for a 20-minute fast charge, you go back and you got, almost a full charge at that point. So it's definitely becoming an attractant to bring more people to your site.
Can we talk a little bit, Max, about this notion of decentralization of energy? What do you mean by decentralization of energy?
So, as I mentioned earlier, and I probably haven't explained it in enough details, is right now, if you want to be a energy or, fuel supplier, you need millions, if not billions of dollars in investment from point of extraction to pipeline or shipping through rails. And then you need to, have the whole processing plants in place to make it into gas or diesel or LNG. And then having the charging, or not a charging station, but the pump or the fuel pump to deliver it to the customer. But right now, all you need is a parking lot or land and a small amount of capital to put a charging station in place, and you're ready to go.
Right. Makes sense. And how is this, because you're coming in typically at the early stages, like for new construction, you're part of the planning, it sounds like.
Correct.
How is this impacting design in commercial real estate?
In commercial, it's the regulation are not as strict as residential. So typically, if you're in, it also varies from municipalities to municipalities. In Metro Vancouver area, or even with the Toronto Green Standard, you need at least 10 to 20% of commercial stalls that needs to be EV ready. And what that means is not a charging station per se, but at least a junction box with all the wires ready to install the charging station in the future. But as you mentioned at the beginning, Cory, now it's being requested by tenants. So whenever developers are signing lease at the very beginning, they might have an electric fleet that are coming on, or they want to have the possibility to offer that to clients, and they understand that it's an attractant to have more people on site. So they're usually putting them right away. If you have a LEED building, then the requirements are going to be a little bit more strict.
Being devil's advocate to this whole thing, let's say I own a small little strip center that sits on a power grid that's maxed out.
Yeah.
How do I, as a landlord, contact you to get these EV charging stations? Is there challenges with that in maybe some smaller markets where the grids aren't as big as you might find in some of the larger markets?
Yeah, typically in commercial, there's always room for level 2 charger. Like that's not a problem because it doesn't consume that much power versus the commercial building. If you're looking into a fast charger, which is the equivalent of a gas station that's going to, charge a vehicle within 20 to 40 minutes, if you have a 150 kilowatt, another 50 kilowatt charger, then you might need a new service calling BC Hydro and have to spend a little bit more dollars. But there's also a really good grant through Clean BC Go Electric program that can fund the project up to 50%.
Can we maybe cover that? Like, so if I'm say a strip mall owner or just anyone who owns maybe multifamily or commercial real estate, what are some of the grants or incentives that the government are offering, and how should that tie into my decision making?
I'm not sure about the audience if it's really just Vancouver or Canada wide. So
we're mostly BC, I would say.
Okay. So in British Columbia, you have mix of grants. A lot is focused on the residential condo retrofit. For the commercial, you would have grants for the office as well. So you always need to be pre-approved. So let's say you're in office space, whether you're the owner or a tenant, you can always apply. Obviously, you need the approval of the building owner if you're not to install charging stations. Get a quote from a company like ours or an electrical contractor, just to make sure that you've done your due diligence, and then you get anywhere between $1,400 to $2,000 per level 2 ports. For the level 3 charging stations, we're talking about anywhere between $50,000 to $80,000 per charging station.
Okay. That's great. And in thinking about this, like, it sounds to me like it's not a question of if, but a question of when everyone's going to have to convert. So are you like right now, it sounds like you're working with a lot of people to bring their commercial spaces up to kind of current standards for EV charging. When do you anticipate, like, in just thinking about this transition, if I'm a business owner or a landowner that hasn't explored this option, do you see a push in the next 1 to 3 years or 3 to 5 years? Like, when should I be getting on top of this?
We're a little biased on that. I'd say as soon as possible. Just like a lot of realtors say, just buy now if you're thinking about
True story.
retaining ownership of for a long time and not just do a quick flip. And the reason behind that is because we don't know how long the government grants are going to be lasting for. And it's not every day that you can get a 50%, discount on a project, especially in the real estate world. And second reason why doing it sooner than later is because you will be the focus point at the beginning of an era, for lack of a better word.
Right.
And I can remember or refer to when Wi-Fi started, and you had their Starbucks, and everybody with their laptops are going there, and that's kind of how they increase their popularity. And then some hotels, you did not need to bring a Cat5 or the blue cable, your Ethernet cable to plug your computer. Then all hotels, and now it's everywhere, and even municipalities are offering it for free on the street. So we're seeing it the same way. It's like first come, first serve, in a way that you're going to get the traction from the beginning. And if you're the last one doing it, it doesn't really make a statement as a building owner. It really just, now we don't really have a choice because everybody else does it.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. It's being kind of first to market right now.
Exactly.
So what happens in the future if all of us end up on electric cars? Is there enough power or energy in the world to support that?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because governments are going around the world trying to find new jobs and how we can employ more people. In BC, we're lucky enough with hydro that there's enough power. Now, if the grid will be able to take it, it's a different story. So in some neighborhoods, you might need to upgrade the transformers, but it's not impossible to do. Like, there's been much bigger projects that, let's just say, the country has had to go towards and through to get, let's say, the power lines or telephone poles or anything like that. So it's just an upgrade in the infrastructure. It's by no means we're going to run out of power.
So let's talk real estate here for a second. So I travel quite a bit throughout the province for work. And a lot of my travels are to and from the BC interior and Vancouver Island.
Mhm.
And I don't have an electric car. I'm scared shirtless. If I had one, shirtless. If I had one and I'm cruising up the Coquihalla in the snow, and my battery goes down to nothing. So let's talk real estate here for a second. What does the future look like? Is there gas stations that are going to have these there, which I know would be kind of almost contradicting what they're selling? Or does Cory and Adam go buy a piece of land on the outskirts of Hope and open up a car charging station with a convenience store, and we make our money off the pop and candy sales? Like, what is the future of this? I know Tesla puts stations, places to try to do this, but what besides Tesla, which I understand, Tesla doesn't hook up to Matt's or Adam's Porsche that he has, electric Porsche, or the multiple electric Porsches he has downstairs.
My gas
electric
Hummer.
Your plug-in helicopter you take to work.
So
how does that play itself out? Is there other companies that are going to have to come to the forefront to try to facilitate that?
And is there a government incentive to come to the table?
Exactly.
Government charging stations.
Okay, so that's a lot of questions into one.
That's what we do in here. 6 questions into one. We're trying to figure out our retirement here because we're both getting older, and we're wondering if maybe opening up a EV car charging station with a convenience store is where we're going to retire.
If you're doing that, call me because I'll be in. So yes, there's a Shell that bought a software company called Greenlots.
Okay.
And they're starting to install a few charging station at their gas station. I know they're started a lot more in the UK, not so much in Canada so far, but I think they're installing a few more.
Okay.
Same thing with Petro-Canada. They've done a pilot project and they have a across the country network. The reliability of that network is still to be proven. And because, like you said, it's a little bit of a conflict of interest with what they're selling, which is gas. You're wondering if they're doing that on purpose or not. And I cannot answer that question because I'm not inside Petro-Can.
Do they take that only to a certain scale, though? Because if I'm a gas producer, I'm selling Shell gas to Shell franchisees where I'm making my money, versus if I put a charging station in there, I'm buying the power from BC Hydro and making a very small margin. So do they take that to scale on a very small level because they don't want to take away from gas sales?
I can speak on behalf of gas stations or gas companies.
Oh, go ahead. No, we got lots of listeners. Go right ahead.
I mean, I just don't want to put myself into a liability position, but I think that they're exploring it, but they're very shy. BC Hydro, though, has put out a lot of DC fast chargers over the years. And they've done a really good program at starting it. What I think that and hopefully they contact me at some point, but what I hope that they're improving is they're getting up to speed with the technology in the vehicles.
Okay.
So I don't want to go too technical here, but the first generation of electric vehicles had a 30 kilowatt hour battery pack. When you're installing a 50 kilowatt charging station, it took 25 to 30 minutes to charge a vehicle, which was fine. But they still keep installing 50 kilowatt chargers when the average battery pack today at a mid SUV vehicle with a longer range of 400 kilometers is about 75 kilowatt hour, which means that your charge has gone from 30 minutes to an hour and a half. Now there's plenty of options to increase, and that's what Norway's done. They're taking 50 kilowatt charger out and they're replacing them with 150 to 350 kilowatts. And there's Electrify Canada, which is the only really reliable provider, which is money from the Dieselgate, if you remember back in the days. 2017 from Volkswagen. So they had to install them, but they are the most reliable network in Canada right now, providing decent charge for any vehicle to charge within 20 to 40 minutes.
So I'm going to say something here, and this could be just completely squishing my retirement plan. Why doesn't BC Hydro go and partner with landowners and create these stations along these major highways and corridors and cities?
They already do. So they've got, if you look at the map, they have a lot at superstores.
Okay.
They're trying to do they're trying to do their best along highways, but it's sometimes hard to find power. there's solutions around that nowadays where you can have a fast charger plugged on a one phase or a smaller connection, and through a battery pack you can deliver up to 150 kilowatt in power, which is really the minimum requirement if you want to future proof your site in terms of speed. And that's something that's really important to understand, because when you have a single manufacturer or vendor coming to you and trying to sell a product, if you don't really understand the industry, they're just going to tell you, oh, it's a fast charger, charges in 20 minutes, and kind of the end of the speech. But they don't explain really what the technology is becoming, because sometimes they don't have the latest technology in their product line, but they still need to sell product, right? So when we're seeing public money sometimes being used with grants for technology that's already antiquated, it's a little bit hard to see on an industry perspective, if that makes sense.
Max, one last question here before we get to our six pack here with you. Can you maybe break down how landowners make money on this? Because if I'm a shopping center owner, and let's say I'm in Vancouver and I have a parking stall that I hypothetically could get between $4, $6, or $8 an hour for that stall.
Yeah.
Why would I want to take that stall out of commission and plug in an EV charger? What does the revenue look like for landowners with respect to that?
Yeah, when you get that many dollars per stall, you're usually on the ground somewhere downtown. But if you're a little bit in the outskirts, usually parking is free, especially in shopping malls. There's three ways that you can make money, and it's not something that you buy a piece of machinery and it's gonna save you 3 workers and you can do an ROI very quickly and very accurate. But what I can say is the 3 revenue generators are, it's not reselling electricity because it's so far illegal, but you can sell time. So whenever somebody plugs in, you can charge per minute or per hour. So that's a revenue generator. The other one is data, because it's connected to an app. People needs to create an account, just like pay by phone, but instead of initiating parking, you're initiating charging. It provides a lot of data. And in 2020, big data has, for the first time in history, surpassed the revenue generated over oil and gas industry around the world. So that's not something to take lightly, and that's also why a lot of companies are trying to get their own charging solution in other people's real estate with really restrictive exclusivity clause, which can sometimes be overlooked. So if the landowner wants to put their own charging station later on, they can't if they sign a 15-year lease deal. And that has a huge, huge impact on the ability to put their own infrastructure in the short or long term.
This sounds like a future Mark Zuckerberg acquisition.
Yeah. And the third part is really bringing more people to site, making your land more valuable because there's more traffic and getting more anchor tenants. I know you guys are talking a lot about anchor tenants when you're looking into investing in commercial real estate, and that would be a big piece of it.
Right. I didn't think of the big data component. That makes a lot of sense, though. That's fascinating. Well, maybe we'll get to the 6-pack here if you have time for that, Max.
Always.
So our 6-pack is powered by our good friends over at Red Point Law. For all your commercial legal needs, visit them at redpointlaw.ca. All right, Matt, I'll give you an easy one to start you off here. Favorite movie or TV show?
I heard you steal it, Cory, in the last episode.
All right.
Suits, hands down.
Suits. Man, I'm starting to see like a trend in commercial real estate.
Yeah, so
still haven't watched it.
Suits is it's a cult following, my friend. Like
I'd say Suits and Drive to Survive. I'm pretty good F1 fan, but now with Formula E is coming up pretty quick as well. So I got 2 sports to follow.
The F1 fan, the audience has grown so insanely fast for F1. Does that seem like the case? I feel like a lot of people I know that never had ever watched F1 now are watching it. Does it seem like it's growing? Is that Netflix maybe documentaries?
I read an article that was called the Netflix effect, and they were showing one race that I guess traditionally has, this is still a lot of people, like 200 or 250,000 spectators.
Yeah.
And this year, in the middle of the pandemic still, they had 400,000 spectators. It was called the Netflix effect.
Yeah.
And I've read stuff that the PGA Tour is now in negotiations with Netflix to do this similar type thing. So you mean it's amazingly. I haven't watched the series because I'm still watching my Suits probably for the 50th time. It feels like, but no, I do hear that guys. I talk to.
You've always been more of a NASCAR guy yourself.
Yeah, no, much more. I'm actually going to go. I'm actually more like a Vancouver Indy type of guy. I'm stuck in the Indy era there still.
Okay, number 2, Max. What is your favorite band or song?
It's so hard. I can't answer that question.
If you say Nickelback, we're going to have a bromance here.
I mean, that's just cliche, but I don't have a favorite band or song. I think that I just have a feel for everything. I'm not a huge fan of opera, but I can easily listen to like classical music on the way home while you had a really long day and you don't, you just feel
You're like a
relaxing.
Spotify listener. You listen based on mood.
Yeah, exactly. Like you go in the, that'd be me. But then you can have your good old hip hop and rap songs. So it really varies from one end to the other.
Let's go down that rabbit hole for a
if
second.
You have hip hop and rap.
Hip hop and rap.
Firmly plants you in the commercial world.
Who are you listening to in the hip hop rap game now, I guess? Because one thing we have is a lot of people that come on this show that are successful in their field of commercial real estate has Coolio on their playlist.
No,
or something
Coolio's not true.
All right. Well, I was trying to make it. I was trying to, this. Maybe we have some families listening. Who knows? What gangster rapper are you listening to?
I was going to say, unfortunately, I will not fall into that trend. I might just break the trend right there because it is not in my playlist.
Okay.
All right. Well, I will have to say, some days, and I have no problem saying this out loud, I'll turn the music up, listening to a little bit of Josh Groban on the way home or Andrea Bocelli. So I have no problem saying that.
No one's looking to Cory for music advice.
Yeah. No, I think I'm still stuck in the early 2000s when in the high school and college thing that you just get memories and you can sing out loud because the new ones you don't really have time to learn the lyrics because you're so busy at work.
Adam and Matt, when I came in this morning, we're singing Barbie Girl.
Yeah, that's
is that kind of the same era? Because they had Barbie Girl in 98 degrees. All right, next question. A quote that you choose to live by or inspires you.
I can't remember who said that, and I don't even know if it's a quote, but I know it's kind of well known. And it's just live your life as if you're writing a book. So a lot of people, and that's my own personal take on this, is there's obviously you need entertainment, but I feel like society sometimes is falling too much into TV shows and watching other people living their lives, wishing they could do the same, but they're not willing to get off the couch and take the pain and do the proper work to make their life what they're looking at through a TV screen.
Yeah, that's a great one. Take action.
My book would suck.
I don't think so.
Oh, come on, Cory.
You ever seen the Robert Munch book where the guy's in the snowsuit has to pee? That's my life.
All right. What is one restaurant, your favorite restaurant or bar?
In town, Burgoo.
Oh, nice.
That was a quick response.
That's a great one. We haven't had that on the show before.
Well, it's because we never have this question because I stole it from you guys. A book you'd recommend our listeners, and doesn't necessarily have to be a real estate book.
I've got three in three different areas, let's say.
Sure.
One is extreme ownership. And I've been in the military
Jocko.
We had that one before.
For
that was
a couple
good.
Years, and I really resonate to that because it's another thing when you about society, when it's a lot easier to just blame on other people when something goes wrong on your failures instead of just looking internally and taking accountability and responsibility for it and fixing it in the future. So I really like that one for accountability, or just if anybody's got a purpose or an objective, that's it's always looking into what can I do to get there instead of blaming other people for my misfortunes. The Golden Spruce, I love that book. I don't know if you guys are aware of that.
Yeah, I've heard. Yeah, I think we've had that on our sister show. But yeah,
Oh,
go ahead.
yeah,
Unpack it.
That's the
like
lower
you
ranking
learn
show.
in school about history, and I feel like I'm learning way more about history through like stories within books that have been written, especially around BC. And it's a good book about, I guess, colonization of British Columbia versus deforestation and how everything came to what we know of today.
All right, Max, final question for you. A piece of advice you would give our listeners, maybe let's tailor it to your industry. Let's say, for example, someone who owns a piece of land and they want to get into the car charging business. What's a piece of advice you'd give them?
Find an EV charging infrastructure expert to work with, whether it's us or somebody else. Dealing with one vendor will limit options and will not future-proof any of the sites that you have, because no sites are the same and there's no one solution fit all. And that's why we're remaining agnostic, because we know that technology is evolving very quickly. And it's not because one brand is the best today that it's going to be the same in a year or two from now, or that they can offer a variety of product line to fit every single building that you have.
That's fantastic, fantastic advice. And the other thing is I know you guys work a lot with the grants. So, I mean, just even to help navigate that component piece as well, I think is invaluable for business owners and for landowners. So we appreciate your time today, Max. Thanks for taking the time. And how can people find out more about what you're up to and, of course, more about Leading Ahead Energy?
Well, you can always go on our website. There's a really nice little video of me explaining what we do in a nutshell. So leadingaheadenergy.com all together. Otherwise, you can find me on LinkedIn at Maxime Charron. I'm not going to spell it out, but I'm sure that people can go on the show. You can put in the notes.
Yep.
And I'm really old school. Just give me a shout. Phone number is online as well.
Fantastic.
Well, thank you so much, Max. We really appreciate your time today and sort of unfolding a little bit more about how the future of the car charging world is going to look like.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for having me. It was a good time. And if anybody's got a question about charging station or new development, we'll be more than happy to help them out.
Great. Thanks so much for your time, Max. Take care. All right, there you have it. Our interview with Max, CEO of Leading Ahead Energy. I was really impressed to how he unpacked it, how much he did. And I didn't realize there were so many facets to the electric car charging business.
You know, and the data collection is also super valuable as well. It's something I would have never considered. The grants, it's like, I feel like it's this moment right now in electric vehicles where as a landowner, you can benefit not only from the grants out there, but obviously the spin-off business, which we kind of covered. If I was someone looking to upgrade to EV chargers, it seems like a no-brainer right now, at least. And you can see it's going to go away at some point, right? The value add. Yeah, well, I think right now too, like I said, you mean like look at the Tesla CEO, right? You mean that stock has just gone through the roof? Yeah, no, he seems like quite the character. You mean that stock's gone through the roof because obviously their sales are going up and up and up, and they're not the only one making car chargers or electric cars now. It seems like everyone's doing it. Right. Like I know you have that electric Porsche downstairs. Yeah, you do multiple colors. Yeah. So everyone's into that business now. That I think there's a lot of value there from a landlord perspective, which we talk a little bit about, and how you can probably drive additional revenue to areas that otherwise maybe wouldn't see it. And who saw that Tesla stock doing what it did the last 2 weeks here? This is just crazy times. But I remember when it was like 100 and something, and I'm like, oh, that might be attractive. I'm like, yeah, I don't know. And I just like my retirement just like swam away on me right there. Yeah. What else have we got, Cory, before we cut for the day? Anything you're excited about? Market still lagging inventory, I would expect. Yeah, it's just an ongoing issue. You mean lack of inventory and really, really cheap money in the marketplace. You mean, believe it or not, a lot of optimism on the retail side of it. We talked about that a few times on the show. And just like spaces that you mean maybe even pre-pandemic that weren't getting the attention on them that are getting the attention right now. Yeah. So there's a lot of optimism in that business. And I think, even Nolan last episode really unpacked it really, really well there. And downtown, I think it's going to be
back to where it was and then some. I think even noticing the traffic out there, like
feels
on a daily
better downtown now. It
you
feels
walk
better.
by patios, they're full. People are back in the shopping centers. So
I'm hyper aware because we talk about this all the time about just the state of downtown and always this notion. I mean, it was at the beginning of the pandemic where we gave a talk at an investor seminar where the whole theme was bet on downtown, this is the time to bet on downtown. You buy downtown when the office buildings are vacant, when nobody wants to be in dense areas and it doesn't quite have its shine, right? But you're already seeing that come back.
Yeah.
And I was downtown, I was in Yaletown yesterday walking around going, it feels good. It feels good down here. It doesn't feel how it did kind of call it June of 2020, right? Was probably one of the lowest, lower points, right?
Yeah. Optimism's in the air. I think, like the Canucks back and concerts back, and that's going to give an injection to the restaurant business and just sort of bring that atmosphere back to downtown a little bit here. And then I think as the offices over the next, I think 2022 will be a big year for a lot of people returning to the offices, maybe on a rotating basis, but at least back in.
Yeah.
That coupled with events and all that stuff taking place, I think we're going to slowly start to feel that Vancouver's coming back to Vancouver.
I got to say, just even driving downtown the other day, the night that the Canucks had their OT win, bunch of people out in jerseys, walking around, going for drinks, going to restaurants. And it felt like, it's crazy how good that feels to be in that kind of environment again.
I'll be honest with you, totally full transparency here. So we do Canuck nights for our brokers.
Yeah.
And usually pre-pandemic, we'd go buy tickets for 2 or 3 or 4 games.
Right.
And we'd have no problem filling them. So this year, instead of going and buying a whole bunch of games, I thought, hey, let's just do one game, which is tonight's game, Friday, November 5th, Nashville Predators, just to put a date stamp on it.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, we could buy 10 tickets and see how it goes. And we were flooded with inquiries. And I can tell you, even this morning in the office, people talking about the hockey game, excited about the hockey game. And I think it's, I don't want to, jump off the bandwagon for the Canucks there, but I think now the fact that people can go back and do stuff like this, people get excited again. We almost took the Canucks for granted. Before that, obviously we're not, a championship team here yet, but people kind of took that for granted. Now people are excited again. Lots of jerseys out there, people in restaurants. So slowly but surely we're making our way back.
I'm also going to just also highlight that I'm super excited for the Christmas parties this year. I feel like one specifically.
That is the James Bond themed Christmas party.
William Wright.
The William Wright Christmas party.
I'm excited. Well, I've got my my Dr. Evil costume.
Well, when you and Matt confirmed, I had to call the hotel we were having at it and increase the drink tickets.
Yeah,
because I'm like,
that's
here
a true story.
Yeah, here they come.
I've been doing a dry November, but I will take a night off for the.
So you're just saving it now.
I'm saving it.
Okay.
I'll be the guy being carried out.
We'll make sure we put lots of bread on the buffet there for you.
Yeah.
To absorb all the dark beer going down.
You have to limit my drink tickets. But no, super excited for that. Cory, anything else before we cut for the day? Like how we can get in touch with the folks over at William Wright?
People can reach out to us at our Vancouver office anytime, 604-428-5255. Happy to help out any commercial real estate capacity we can. They can visit our website at williamwright.ca. Or they're always welcome to drop me an email at Cory@williamwright.ca anytime. I do apologize, I am not the fastest on replies as of late, but I will definitely get back to them. Anyone that emails them, and we get lots of calls at the office. We're helping lots of people get into commercial real estate, whether it be first-time buyers or even tenants looking to enter the marketplace. So it's been a really, really great scenario to really be able to educate a lot of people.
Fantastic. We'll leave it there for today. But yeah, thanks for listening, and we'll see you back here next week.
We will. Thanks, guys.
Subscribe today.